Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The following content is provided for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or psychological advice. The demographic trends, historical data, and case studies discussed are based on broad societal patterns and should not be applied to any specific individual situation without consulting with a qualified professional, a licensed attorney, or a certified financial planner. Laws regarding domestic relations vary significantly by state and jurisdiction. Please conduct your own due diligence and seek professional counsel before making any major life decisions based on the information presented in this video. The American marriage is currently undergoing its most radical transformation since the 1970s, yet most men are still operating on a social playbook written 40 years ago. If you look at the statistics from 1980, the narrative of divorce was predictable. It was often characterized by the 7-year itch, young couples struggling to find their footing, or the fallout of the early no-fault divorce era. But today, a massive tectonic shift is occurring beneath the surface of the U.S. population. The fastest-growing demographic of divorce in America isn't 20-somethings or those in their early 30s. It is men over the age of 50. This phenomenon, often referred to as gray divorce, has doubled since the 1990s. While divorce rates for younger generations are actually declining, the rate for those in the baby boomer and late Gen X cohorts is skyrocketing. This creates a high-stakes paradox. For the modern American man, the risk of divorce doesn't necessarily disappear after 25 years of marriage and a shared mortgage. In many ways, the demographic data suggests that the risk is actually compounding over time, reaching a peak just as men are preparing for their most vulnerable years, retirement. This video is a deep dive masterclass into the changing demographics of divorce for men in America. We are going to peel back the layers on why the traditional marital timeline has broken down, how educational and economic divides have created a two-tiered system of marital stability, and what the historical trends tell us about the future of the American household. By the end of this series, you will understand the modern landscape of the American family better than 99% of the population, giving you the clarity needed to navigate a society where the old rules no longer apply. To understand where we are going, we have to look at the statistical foundation of how we got here. Historically, the United States saw a massive spike in divorce rates following the implementation of the No-Fault Divorce Act, first signed in California in 1969. Before this, divorce required a showing of fault, adultery, abandonment, or cruelty. Once the legal barriers dropped, the demographic floodgates opened. However, that initial surge eventually stabilized. For decades, the common refrain was that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. While that number is often cited, it masks a much more complex reality regarding how different groups of men experience marital dissolution today. One of the most significant demographic shifts involves the education gap. In the 21st century, divorce has become increasingly rare for men with a college degree or higher. We are seeing a widening chasm between what sociologists call the marriage elite and the working class. Men with higher levels of education and higher earning potential are seeing their divorce rates drop to levels not seen since the 1960s. Conversely, men in the lower middle and working class demographics are experiencing higher rates of marital instability than ever before. This isn't just about money. It's about the shift in marriage from a foundational institution used to build a life into a capstone institution that is only entered once a certain level of financial and social stability is achieved. Case studies in recent census data highlight that for men in the top 20% of earners, marriage is often a stabilizing force that compounds wealth. For men in the bottom 40%, the demographic trend shows a move toward cohabitation without marriage, or what is known as the fragile family structure. This creates a cycle where the demographic of divorce is increasingly concentrated in specific socioeconomic brackets, fundamentally changing the landscape of American fatherhood and household wealth. But why is the over 50 demographic, the gray divorcee, exploding while younger rates fall? To understand this, we have to look at the shift in life expectancy and the evolution of the female workforce. In 1970, a man retiring at 65 might expect to live another 10 years. Today, that same man might expect to live another 20 or 25 years. This expanded horizon has changed the cost-benefit analysis of an unhappy marriage. When a couple hits the empty nest stage, when the children have moved out and the primary tether holding the domestic unit together is removed, men and women are increasingly looking at the next 2 decades and deciding that they would rather spend them alone or with a new partner than in a stale arrangement. Furthermore, the demographic of the American wife has changed. In previous generations, many women were economically tethered to their husbands, making divorce a financial impossibility. Today, as women have surpassed men in college graduation rates and have entered high-earning career paths in record numbers, the economic necessity of staying in a marriage has diminished. This leads to a critical statistic that every man in America needs to understand. Roughly 70% of divorces in the U.S. are initiated by women. In the over 50 demographic, that number can sometimes climb even higher. This reveals a massive disconnect between how men and women perceive the health of their marriages as they age. Historical trends show that men are often blindsided by divorce filings because they tend to measure marital success by the absence of overt conflict, whereas women often measure it by the presence of emotional intimacy and shared growth. When those metrics diverge over 20 or 30 years, the demographic result is a late-stage filing that leaves the man facing a radical reconstruction of his life at a time when his earning power may be waning. Consider the impact on social capital. One of the most overlooked demographic shifts for men is the isolation that follows a late-stage divorce. Statistically, married men have larger social circles, better health outcomes, and longer life expectancies. However, those social circles are often maintained by the wife. When a divorce occurs in the 50-plus demographic, men frequently lose not just their partner, but their entire social infrastructure. This has led to what researchers call the loneliness epidemic among divorced American men, a demographic reality that has profound implications for public health and the healthcare system. We also have to address the shift in fatherhood demographics. In the 1990s, the standard outcome of a divorce was the father becoming a weekend visitor. Today, there is a massive push toward 50-50 shared parenting. This change in the legal and social landscape means that for younger men, the demographic of the divorced father is no longer one of absence, but one of continued high-level engagement. This shift has altered the financial dynamics of divorce, moving away from simple alimony models toward complex shared expense models that reflect the dual-income nature of modern households. As we look deeper into this masterclass, we will examine the specific economic data regarding asset division in a world of 401ks and complex portfolios, compared to the pension-heavy world of our grandfathers. The demographics of divorce are no longer just about who stays in the house, they are about the long-term viability of the American middle class. We are seeing a total redefinition of what it means to be a single man in America, from the rise of digital dating for seniors to the way property is held across multiple decades. This is not just a statistical change. It is a cultural revolution that is redefining the male experience from the ground up. Over the next 9 parts, we will break down the strategies, the pitfalls, and the data-driven realities of this new era. The world has changed, the numbers have shifted, and it is time for a new level of understanding. To understand the shifting landscape of 2026, we must first dissect the emergence of what sociologists call the divorce divide. In the current American economy, marriage is no longer a universal milestone. It has increasingly become a luxury good accessible primarily to those with high levels of social and economic capital. Historical trends indicate that for the first time in the history of the United States, your likelihood of staying married is tied directly to the degree you hold and the industry in which you work. If you are a man with a graduate degree or a specialized technical certification, your demographic profile suggests a high level of marital stability. However, if we look at a case study of a man like David, a 35-year-old trade professional living in Ohio, the reality is starkly different. For David and millions of men in the working class, marriage has become increasingly fragile, not due to a lack of commitment, but because of a convergence of economic pressures that have redefined the modern household. In the 2026 economy, the cost of basic living requirements, housing, healthcare, and education has significantly outpaced wage growth for the bottom 60% of earners. This creates a demographic pressure cooker. When David faces a reduction in billable hours or encounters unexpected medical debt, the stress acts as a chemical solvent on the marital bond. Contrast this with Mark, a 42-year-old senior project manager in Austin, Texas. Mark and his wife represent the rise of assortative mating, which is the tendency for high-earning, highly educated individuals to marry one another. For Mark, the demographic reality is that divorce is not just an emotional decision. It is an economic catastrophe. In a dual-income household earning a combined $250,000, the couple can navigate the high interest rates and property taxes of 2026. As a single man, Mark would be pushed into a demographic of renters, losing the primary vehicle for his generational wealth. This is the new American reality. Divorce has become a tool of downward social mobility for the middle-class man. while the upper-class man often remains married to preserve a lifestyle that requires two high-level salaries to sustain. Imagine if Mark decides to file for divorce tomorrow. He is looking at a housing market where the median price in a safe school district has surpassed $800,000. Historically, a man in his position would have moved into a smaller home or a townhome nearby. In 2026, the friction of the real estate market is so high that many men find themselves in a demographic trap. They are functionally separated but forced to live under the same roof, because neither partner can afford to refinance the mortgage or qualify for a new loan at current rates. This has led to a rise in what is known as the birdnesting demographic, where parents rotate in and out of the family home while the children stay put. While this sounds equitable, case studies show it often leads to prolonged legal conflict and a significant drain on a man's mental health and career productivity. Next, we must examine the step-by-step breakdown of how these demographics are shifting through the lens of timing. Men in 2026 are entering marriage much later than their fathers did, often in their early to mid-30s. While this delay was originally predicted to lower divorce rates due to increased maturity, the data now shows a secondary effect. It has created a new demographic of high-asset divorces. When these men do divorce, they are not splitting a used car and a security deposit. They are deconstructing 401ks that have been compounding for 15 years and home equity that has reached record highs. For a man in 2026, the financial stakes of a divorce are exponentially higher than they were 20 years ago because more of his life's work is tied up in complex, illiquid assets. This brings us to a second critical demographic shift: the rise of the high-earning female spouse. In 2026, nearly 40% of married women in the United States earn as much as or more than their husbands. This has fundamentally flipped the historical script of divorce demographics. In the past, the primary concern for a man was the payment of lifelong alimony. Today, we are seeing a record number of case studies where men are the ones seeking spousal support or a larger share of the marital assets because they have taken on the role of the primary caregiver or moved their careers to support their wife's advancement. This shift is creating a massive identity crisis. The American man is navigating a legal system that was designed in the 1970s for a 2026 economic reality. The historical trends of the breadwinner model are collapsing, but the societal expectations of men during a divorce have not yet caught up. Step back and look at the broader geographic data. We are currently witnessing a great migration of divorced men across the United States. Census data from early 2026 shows a significant movement of single, middle-aged men away from high-cost coastal cities like San Francisco, Seattle, and New York toward more affordable hubs like Nashville, Charlotte, or Phoenix. This is creating a new demographic of the relocated father. These men have decided that the financial cost of being a divorced parent in a Tier 1 city is simply unsustainable. By moving to places where their remaining assets provide a higher quality of life, they are effectively changing the demographic makeup and consumer patterns of these growing cities. However, this migration comes with a hidden cost: the erosion of the father-child bond. The demographic data suggests that the greater the distance between households, the lower the frequency of long-term paternal engagement, creating a ripple effect that will impact the next generation of American children. Consider also the impact of the digital economy on these demographics. In 2026, the way men meet and interact is entirely mediated by algorithms. This has created a winner-take-all demographic in the dating market for divorced men. A small percentage of men find themselves in high demand, while a massive demographic of divorced men over 40 find themselves effectively invisible in the digital landscape. This invisibility leads to a significant decrease in remarriage rates. Historically, men were more likely to remarry quickly after a divorce. In 2026, that trend is reversing. Men are staying single longer, contributing to a massive rise in the one-person household demographic, which now accounts for nearly 30% of all U.S. households. This shift in living arrangements has profound implications for the construction industry and the retail economy, as we see a move toward what urban planners call the bachelor infrastructure: smaller apartments, more service-oriented amenities, and a focus on convenience over community. The reality is that the demographic profile of a divorced man in America has been completely rewritten. He is no longer the 1950s caricature leaving for a younger partner. He is more likely to be a 45-year-old manager who has spent 2 decades building a life, only to find that the economic and social foundations of that life were built on shifting sand. He is facing a legal system that often views him through a lens of 1980s gender roles, while he is trying to navigate a 2026 world of shared parenting and dual-career competition. Understanding these demographic shifts is the only way to anticipate the potential outcomes of your own life path. Whether you are currently married, considering it, or navigating the aftermath of a split, the data is your only objective guide in a world of emotional noise. You need to know where you sit on the educational and economic spectrum to understand your statistical risk and your potential recovery path. But there is one specific demographic shift that is more volatile than all the others combined. It is a trend that is currently being discussed in closed-door legal seminars across the country, but it is rarely mentioned in the mainstream media. It involves the way technology and surveillance are being used in modern divorce filings, creating a new demographic of the digitally compromised man. In an age where every location, every text, and every transaction is recorded, the very definition of privacy in a marriage has vanished, and the demographic impact on how divorces are litigated is reaching a breaking point. If you think the financial split is the hardest part, you haven't seen the data on how digital footprints are being used to reshape custody and asset division in 2026. This leads us to a crucial question. How do you protect your future when your past is permanently recorded? In the next part, we are going to dive into the digital forensics of divorce and why your smartphone might be the most dangerous witness in your legal case. In the landscape of 2026, your smartphone is no longer just a communication device. It is a high-fidelity flight recorder of your personal life. Historically, divorce evidence was gathered through private investigators or physical receipts left in a pocket. Today, the demographic of the digitally compromised man is expanding rapidly because most men do not realize that their digital footprint is a permanent, indelible record of their movements, intentions, and financial habits. To understand the gravity of this shift, consider the case of James, a 48-year-old software architect in Denver. James believed his divorce would be a standard asset split based on his declared income and a simple shared parenting schedule. However, he had spent a decade integrating his home with the latest smart technology, from biometric health rings to integrated home security systems. During the discovery phase of his legal proceedings, the legal team representing his spouse subpoenaed his cloud data. James had testified that his work schedule required him to be in the office until late in the evening, which he used as a justification for a specific custody arrangement. But the data from his smart home told a different story. The logs from his smart thermostat and the motion sensors in his home office showed that he was consistently home 2 hours earlier than he claimed. Furthermore, his biometric ring recorded his sleep patterns and heart rate, which were used to challenge his claims about the stress and physical requirements of his profession. In 2026, the demographic trend shows that men who are heavy users of wearable tech and smart home integration are at a higher statistical risk of having their own data used as a neutral witness against them. Imagine if every location you visited in the last 5 years was plotted on a map and compared against your bank statements. This is not a hypothetical scenario for the modern American man. In current legal case studies, forensic analysts are increasingly focusing on what is known as digital exhaust. This is the trail of data you leave behind through passive interactions with technology. For example, your vehicle's onboard computer logs every door opening, every hard-braking event, and every GPS destination. In a contentious divorce, this metadata can be used to build a narrative of a man's lifestyle that contradicts his formal testimony. If a man claims he cannot afford a certain level of support, but his car's GPS shows frequent visits to high-end restaurants or luxury retail hubs, the historical trend suggests that judges will favor the data over the verbal testimony. Step by step, a digital forensic audit in 2026 follows a precise path. First, the analyst secures an image of all shared cloud accounts. This includes not just the primary email, but the often forgotten storage lockers like Google Drive, iCloud, and Dropbox. Men often believe that deleting a message on their phone removes it from the record. However, in the interconnected ecosystem of 2026, that message often exists in 3 places: the sender's device, the receiver's device, and the cloud backup of both. Furthermore, the recovery of deleted data has become an automated process for high-end law firms. Second, the audit looks at third-party application data. This is where the demographic shift becomes particularly interesting. We are seeing a rise in cases where fitness apps, gaming platforms, and even grocery delivery services are used to establish a person's presence and spending habits. Take the case of Robert, a 52-year-old business owner who attempted to shield a portion of his assets using cryptocurrency. Robert thought he was being cautious by using a hardware wallet and not keeping records on his primary computer. What he didn't account for was the trail of microtransactions from his primary checking account to the crypto exchange used for the initial purchase. In 2026, forensic accountants use specialized AI software to scan years of bank statements in seconds, flagging every transaction that fits the profile of a crypto on-ramp. Once that thread is pulled, the entire demographic of the hidden asset man begins to unravel. The potential outcome is often a court-ordered surrender of the assets and a significant loss of credibility in the eyes of the court, which can impact every other aspect of the settlement. The evolution of the family sharing feature is another demographic trap for the 2026 man. Historically, privacy within a marriage was maintained by separate physical spaces. In the digital age, most families utilize shared plans for everything from streaming services to photo libraries. Even after a separation, these digital tethers often remain active. Case studies show that men frequently forget to remove their devices from a shared family group, allowing a spouse to track their location in real time or view new photos and contacts as they are added. This digital transparency has eliminated the concept of a clean break. The demographic data indicates that men who do not perform a comprehensive digital audit within the first 48 hours of a filing are significantly more likely to face complications during the litigation process. But the shift goes deeper than just location and money. It extends to the realm of character assassination through digital history. In 2026, the way a man presents himself on LinkedIn or professional forums can be used to establish his earning capacity. If a man is currently unemployed but his professional profile lists him as a top-tier consultant with a global reach, the court may impute income to him based on his self-described expertise. This creates a demographic of men who are trapped by their own professional branding. They have spent years building an image of success to attract clients and employers, only to find that this same image is used to set their financial obligations at a level they can no longer maintain. Furthermore, we must address the role of AI in the 2026 legal system. Law firms are now using sentiment analysis algorithms to scan thousands of emails and text messages to determine the primary aggressor in a marital dispute. These algorithms can identify patterns of communication that a human might miss, subtle shifts in tone, frequency of contact, and the use of specific keywords that correlate with high-conflict personalities. This means that a man's digital history is being graded by a machine. The demographic of men who are naturally more assertive or direct in their communication styles often find themselves flagged by these algorithms as being high conflict, which can negatively impact custody evaluations. The psychological impact of this 24/7 surveillance state cannot be overstated. Men in 2026 are reporting higher levels of paranoia and anxiety during the divorce process because they realize that they are essentially living in a glass house. The historical trend of marriage as a private union has been replaced by marriage as a recorded event. This shift is fundamentally changing how men approach new relationships as well. We are seeing a new demographic of men who are insisting on digital prenuptials, agreements that dictate how digital data will be handled, shared, and deleted in the event of a split. They are looking for ways to reclaim their digital sovereignty in a world that is designed to log everything. As we continue this masterclass, it is clear that the modern man is fighting a battle on two fronts: the physical world of assets and custody, and the digital world of data and perception. The changing demographics of divorce are being driven by these invisible currents of information. But there is a factor even more influential than your smartphone, and it is something most men never see coming until the first court date. It involves the way the 2026 legal system has begun to automate the very definition of fairness. In many jurisdictions, the human element of judging is being phased out in favor of standardized formulas that treat your life like a math problem to be solved. If you think your personal story and your unique circumstances will win the day, you need to understand the rise of the algorithmic decree. In the next part, we are going to look at the cold, hard mathematics of modern support calculations and how the 2026 legal machine is removing the soul from the American family court. The courtroom experience in 2026 has shifted from a battle of rhetoric to a battle of data entry. Judges are increasingly reliant on standardized software modules to determine the financial future of men, moving away from the era of judicial discretion where a human being might look at the nuances of a man's sacrifice or his specific local economic conditions. We have entered the age of the algorithmic decree. In this landscape, your personal narrative is often secondary to the inputs provided to a state-mandated calculator. To understand how this impacts the modern American man, we must look at the specific case study of Michael, a 45-year-old operations manager in Atlanta. Michael has a solid salary, but in 2026, The cost of living in Georgia's urban hubs has spiked significantly, with housing and insurance costs reaching historic highs. When his marriage of 15 years dissolved, Michael expected a human conversation about his expenses and his contributions to the family. Instead, he encountered a digital interface. In many U.S. jurisdictions, the income shares model is now the absolute standard. This model operates on the theory that children should receive the same proportion of parental income that they would have received if the parents lived together. The algorithm calculates the total income of both parents and determines what percentage each would have contributed. Let us break down the step-by-step calculation Michael faced. The algorithm first takes his gross income, which is a critical point of friction. It does not look at his net take-home pay after taxes and basic survival costs. It starts with the top-line number. While it subtracts specific allowable deductions like mandatory retirement contributions or health insurance premiums, the definition of an allowable deduction in 2026 has narrowed. The algorithm then looks at the combined income of both households. If Michael makes $120,000 and his spouse makes $80,000, Michael is statistically responsible for 60% of the calculated cost of raising the children. However, the machine does not stop at food and clothing. It layers in the cost of high-speed fiber optic internet, digital subscriptions required for modern schooling, and the skyrocketing cost of youth sports and extracurricular activities, which have seen a 200% increase in cost over the last decade. Imagine if Michael decided to take a lower-paying job to reduce his stress and spend more time with his kids during this transition. In the historical trends of the late 20th century, a judge might have found this move reasonable and compassionate. In 2026, the algorithm performs what is known as an imputation of income. If the machine determines that Michael has the capacity to earn more based on his 20-year work history and his educational demographic, it will calculate his support obligations based on that hypothetical higher salary, regardless of what he is actually bringing home. This creates a demographic of men who are functionally working poor despite having high-prestige titles. They are trapped in a debt cycle mandated by a formula that refuses to acknowledge the reality of professional burnout or a changing, AI-disrupted job market. The math for spousal maintenance, or alimony, has also become a rigid flowchart. In 2026, many states have adopted duration-based formulas. A 10-year marriage might trigger a 3-year support period, while a 20-year marriage could trigger long-term support that consumes a significant portion of a man's remaining career earnings. For a man like Michael, the demographic risk is that the algorithm uses a lifestyle analysis based on the last 3 years of spending. If the couple lived on high-interest credit cards or depleted their savings to maintain an image of upper-middle-class stability in 2025, the algorithm may still use those spending levels to determine the maintenance amount for 2026 and beyond. The machine lacks empathy for the man's post-divorce reality. It does not account for the fact that Michael now has to pay for a second set of household utilities, a second security deposit, and the cost of furnishing a new residence from scratch in a market where a one-bedroom apartment costs more than his entire previous mortgage. Demographic data shows that while a household's total income remains the same post-split, the expenses of maintaining two separate lives increase by 30 to 40%. The algorithmic decree often leaves the higher-earning man with a disposable income that is below the basic subsistence level for his specific zip code, while legally requiring him to maintain the previous lifestyle of his former household. This is the mathematical reality of the 2026 divorce. It is a wealth-stripping event that is codified into a spreadsheet. To add even more depth to this shift, consider the role of the Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO. In 2026, AI-driven forensic tools are used to slice retirement accounts with surgical precision. Historically, a man might have negotiated to keep his 401k in exchange for giving up equity in the home. Today, the demographic trend is moving toward the total liquidation of all joint assets. The algorithm looks at the present value of future pension payments and 401k compounding, often forcing a man to hand over a massive percentage of his future security to satisfy a present-day calculation. Take the case of Greg, a 58-year-old project lead, who is part of the gray divorce demographic we discussed earlier. Greg is 7 years away from his planned retirement. The 2026 legal machine, however, calculated his support obligations based on his peak earning years. Because the algorithm does not automatically account for a future decrease in income due to retirement, Greg is faced with a potential outcome where he must work until he is 75 just to avoid falling into arrears. The machine treats his future labor as an infinite resource to be tapped, ignoring the biological and professional reality of aging. Step by step, the modern support audit follows a path of total transparency. First, there is an automated IRS data pull that verifies all historical income. Second, there is the application of the state-mandated formula, which often includes a cost of living adjustment that is tied to the consumer price index. Third, there is an adjustment for parenting time, measured in overnights. However, even this is a trap. If a man misses his scheduled overnights due to the very work requirements he needs to pay the support, the algorithm can be adjusted to increase his payments. It is a closed-loop system that leaves very little room for human error or life's unpredictability. The speed of this process is what catches the American man off guard. In the past, legal proceedings took months of back-and-forth negotiation. In 2026, many of these financial determinations are being made in initial, often virtual, hearings based on preliminary data. Once the machine has spoken and the decree is generated, changing the result is an uphill legal battle that requires significant financial resources the man no longer has because they have been allocated by the very machine he is trying to fight. This automated approach to family law is a primary driver of the changing demographics of divorce, pushing more men into financial instability and long-term debt. It removes the soul from the process, treating the destruction of a family unit as a simple accounting problem. But as devastating as the financial math can be, there is a different kind of calculation happening in the shadows of the American legal system. It is a calculation of time and influence. While the money can be tracked by a spreadsheet, the demographic shift in how custody is actually awarded, and more importantly, how it is enforced, is where the real battle for the American father is being fought. In the next part, we are going to expose the reality of the 50-50 custody myth and look at the data on why having the right on paper does not always translate to having a presence in person. We will break down the tactical maneuvers being used in 2026 to erode the father-child bond, and what the demographic data says about the men who successfully navigate the custody gauntlet. The legal landscape of 2026 presents a surface-level victory for the American father that often masks a much harsher demographic reality. While over 40 states have now passed legislation that creates a rebuttable presumption of 50-50 shared parenting, the data reveals a massive implementation gap. For the modern man, having equal rights on paper is not the same as having equal presence in the home. The historical trend of the visitor dad, the father who sees his children every other weekend and for a few hours on Wednesday nights, is supposedly a relic of the past. Yet, in 2026, a new demographic has emerged: the paper father. These are men who have 50-50 custody in a courtroom but find their actual time eroded by 1,000 small administrative cuts, leading to a functional custody arrangement that looks remarkably like the outdated models of the 1990s. To understand how this happens, we must look at the case study of Chris, a 38-year-old civil engineer in Charlotte, North Carolina. Chris is part of the demographic of fathers who believe that the law is self-executing. When his divorce was finalized in early 2026, the decree clearly stated an equal alternating week schedule. However, Chris soon encountered what sociologists call the status quo trap. In the 6 months leading up to the final decree, Chris had moved into a temporary studio apartment, while his spouse remained in the family home. To maintain stability for the children, he agreed to a temporary schedule where they stayed with him only on weekends. In the eyes of the 2026 legal machine, those 6 months established a new baseline of stability. Even with a 50-50 order in hand, the demographic data shows that courts are increasingly hesitant to disrupt the established routine if the primary household has become the psychological anchor for the children. Imagine if you move into a beautiful apartment 45 minutes away from your children's school, thinking that a 3/4-hour commute is a small price to pay for your independence. In the 2026 demographic of divorced fathers, this is known as the proximity penalty. Data suggests that for every 10 miles a father lives away from the primary school district, his actual realized parenting time drops by 15% over a 5-year period. The friction of the commute, the logistics of extracurricular activities, and the social lives of the children, which in 2026 are more hyper-scheduled than ever, eventually act as a centrifugal force, pushing the father out of the daily rotation. Chris found that while he had the right to every other week, the reality of driving 90 minutes round trip for soccer practice and school drop-offs meant he was constantly asking for modifications or allowing the children to stay at the primary house for convenience. Step by step, his 50-50 arrangement dissolved into a 70-30 split, not by legal decree, but by logistical attrition. This brings us to the rise of tactical gatekeeping in the digital age. In 2026, parental communication is almost entirely mediated through court-mandated apps. These platforms are designed to reduce conflict, but they have also created a new demographic of the micromanaged father. Historical trends show that gatekeeping, the process where one parent limits the other's access through information control, has shifted from the physical world to the digital one. If Chris isn't checking the app every hour, he misses the notification that the Tuesday evening baseball game was moved to Monday. By the time he sees it, the event is over. When this happens repeatedly, a narrative is built in the digital logs that the father is uninvolved or unreliable. In the high-stakes custody battles of 2026, these digital breadcrumbs are used to argue for a reduction in the father's time based on his supposed lack of engagement. The demographic of men who successfully navigate this gauntlet are those who have adopted what we call the documentation warrior mindset. These men understand that in 2026, the only way to protect the father-child bond is to treat custody with the same level of professional rigor as a corporate merger. They live within a 5-mile radius of the school. They are the ones who volunteer for the unpopular school committees. They maintain meticulous records of every missed visit or denied communication. Case studies of successful 50-50 fathers in 2026 show a high correlation between geographic proximity and long-term paternal influence. For these men, the potential outcome is a deep, sustaining relationship with their children, but the cost is a radical restriction on their own lifestyle and career mobility. Furthermore, we must address the demographic of the social father versus the legal father. In 2026, as blended families become the statistical norm for divorced men, we are seeing a shift in how fatherhood is defined. A man may be a 50-50 father to his biological children, while simultaneously acting as a full-time social father to his new partner's children. This creates a demographic of men who are stretched thin across multiple households, leading to a phenomenon known as paternal burnout. The data indicates that men in this position are at a higher risk of health complications and career stagnation, as they attempt to meet the rigorous emotional and financial demands of two different family units. But there is a darker demographic trend that the 2026 data is just beginning to quantify: the rise of the erased father. This occurs in high-conflict scenarios where parental alienation has been digitized. Imagine if your children's social media feeds and group chats are curated to exclude your presence. In an era where a child's reality is largely defined by their digital environment, being excluded from the family group chat or the shared photo album is a form of psychological erasure that is difficult to fight in a traditional courtroom. The demographic of men facing this type of alienation often feels a sense of profound helplessness, as the legal system struggles to keep pace with the nuances of digital-age parental interference. The statistics for 2026 show that the first 3 years post-divorce are the most critical for a man's long-term demographic trajectory as a father. If he maintains a high level of engagement during this window, he is likely to remain an active parent for life. If he allows the friction of logistics, the weight of the proximity penalty, or the pressure of the status quo trap to push him to the margins, the historical trend suggests he will eventually become part of the 40% of divorced fathers who lose meaningful contact with their children within a decade. This isn't just about the children's well-being. It is a fundamental shift in the male identity. For the American man in 2026, the loss of the fatherhood role is often the precursor to a broader collapse in his social and physical health. The demographic data shows a direct line between reduced parenting time and increased rates of depression, substance abuse, and cardiovascular issues in divorced men. The custody gauntlet is not just a legal battle. It is a fight for the man's very survival and his place in the future of the American family. As we move forward in this deep dive masterclass, we have to look beyond the courtroom and the counting house. There is a physiological transformation that happens to men during and after a divorce that is rarely discussed in mainstream circles. The stress of the algorithmic decree and the custody gauntlet doesn't just stay in your lawyer's office. It gets under your skin. We are seeing a demographic explosion of health-related issues that are specific to divorced men in the current era. In the next part, we are going to explore the physical toll, the data on why the divorce rate for men is also a health crisis, and how the 2026 medical community is finally beginning to recognize the divorce syndrome. If you think the financial split is the only thing that can break you, you need to see the data on what is happening to the male body during this demographic shift. The biological reality of the 2026 divorce for men is often more catastrophic than the legal or financial fallout. In the medical community, researchers have begun identifying a specific cluster of physiological symptoms known as divorce syndrome. This is not merely a psychological state. It is a measurable systemic collapse of the male biological infrastructure, under the weight of prolonged litigation and domestic displacement. To understand this demographic shift, we must look at the case study of Stephen, a 50-year-old executive in Chicago. In early 2025, Stephen was a high-functioning individual with normal blood pressure and an active lifestyle. By mid-2026, after 18 months of navigating the algorithmic decree and custody battles, his biological age had advanced by nearly 7 years according to epigenetic clock testing. The primary driver of this physiological decline is the dysregulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA axis. When a man like Stephen enters a high-stakes divorce, his body enters a state of permanent fight or flight. Historically, this response was meant to be acute, lasting minutes or hours. In the 2026 legal landscape, where digital forensics and constant app-based communication keep the conflict alive 24/7, the adrenaline and cortisol never recede. Step by step, this chronic cortisol elevation begins to dismantle the male body. First, it suppresses the production of luteinizing hormone, which leads to a significant drop in total and free testosterone. Demographic data from 2026 shows that divorced men experience an average 30% decline in testosterone levels within the first year of filing. This leads to muscle wasting, increased visceral fat, often called the divorce gut, and a profound loss of drive and cognitive clarity. Imagine if your body's internal security system was stuck in an infinite loop, burning through all your fuel reserves while simultaneously attacking your own infrastructure. This is what is happening to the demographic of men in their 40s and 50s during a split. The high cortisol levels lead to systemic inflammation, which is the precursor to the cardiovascular events that statistically plague divorced men. Historical trends indicate that divorced men have a 250% higher mortality rate from all causes compared to their married counterparts. In 2026, this is being linked directly to the loss of the health manager. In the majority of American households, the spouse typically manages the preventative health calendar, scheduling colonoscopies, tracking blood pressure, and managing nutritional standards. When a man is displaced, his preventative care usually drops to zero. Case studies in 2026 reveal a pattern. Stephen stopped going to the gym because he was either working extra hours to pay for the algorithmic support obligations, or he was using his limited free time to navigate legal documents. His diet shifted from home-cooked meals to high-sodium, ultra-processed delivery options, the bachelor diet demographic. This shift, combined with chronic stress, creates a perfect storm for hypertension. By the time Stephen reached his first major custody hearing, his resting heart rate had climbed from 60 to 85 beats per minute. This physiological state makes it nearly impossible to remain calm and articulate in a courtroom, often leading to poor outcomes that further feed the stress cycle. We must also address the sleep debt demographic. In 2026, the use of wearable technology has allowed us to track the sleep architecture of men undergoing divorce with unprecedented precision. The data shows a near-total collapse of REM and deep sleep stages. Men in this demographic are living in a state of permanent sleep deprivation, which impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function and emotional regulation. When Stephen is sitting across from a mediator, his brain is functionally equivalent to someone who is legally intoxicated. He is more likely to make impulsive concessions or lash out in anger, both of which are recorded in the digital logs of the 2026 legal machine to be used against him later. Furthermore, there is the phenomenon of broken heart syndrome, or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. While historically associated with women, 2026 data shows a rising demographic of men over 55 experiencing the stress-induced heart failure during the finalization of a divorce. The sudden loss of a long-term social identity and the physical isolation of a new, empty living space can trigger a surge of catecholamines that literally stuns the heart muscle. This isn't just poetry. It is a clinical reality for thousands of American men every year. Step by step, the physical toll of divorce creates a feedback loop that impacts a man's career. As Stephen's health declines, his productivity at work falters. In the hyper-competitive, AI-integrated workplace of 2026, any dip in performance is immediately noticed. If Stephen loses his job or is demoted due to his health-related performance issues, the algorithmic decree does not automatically adjust. He is still held to the earning capacity of his healthier, more productive self. This creates a demographic of men who are literally working themselves into an early grave to meet financial obligations that were calculated when they were at their physical peak. The demographic of the relocated father, which we discussed earlier, faces an even higher health risk. The loss of a local support network means there is no one to notice the subtle signs of physical or mental decline. In 2026, social isolation is being treated as a health risk factor equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. For the divorced man living in a Tier 2 city after moving away from his family home, the lack of physical touch and meaningful social interaction leads to a chronic deficit of oxytocin. This hormone is essential for counteracting the effects of cortisol. Without it, the man's body remains in a state of high alert, accelerating the aging process and weakening the immune system. Consider the data on substance use. The 2026 demographic of divorced men shows a significant uptick in the use of both prescription anti-anxiety medications and alcohol as a form of self-medication for the divorce syndrome. This further complicates the health profile, leading to liver strain and increased risk of accidents. The historical trend of the heavy drinking divorcee has evolved into a more modern, but no less dangerous, reliance on a cocktail of pharmaceuticals and lifestyle substances to numb the physiological pain of the transition. Understanding the physical toll is the first step in surviving the demographic shift. The men who successfully navigate 2026 are those who recognize that their body is their primary asset. They are the ones who prioritize sleep hygiene and hormone optimization as a core part of their legal strategy. They understand that if they break physically, they lose everything else: the money, the access to their children, and their future. But as daunting as the health crisis is, there is an even more complex demographic shift happening in the way men are perceived by the public and the private sector. There is a growing movement in the United States that is changing the very definition of what a divorced man is allowed to be in the eyes of society. While the body is failing, a new industry is rising to capitalize on the male transition. This industry is reshaping how men spend their remaining capital and how they re-enter the dating market. In the next part, we are going to dive into the post-divorce industry, the data on the billions of dollars being spent to reinvent the American man, and why the 2026 version of the midlife crisis is actually a sophisticated marketing demographic. If you think you are making your own choices about your post-divorce life, you need to see the data on how you are being targeted. The moment the legal notification hits the digital ether in 2026, an invisible clock starts ticking in the data centers of every major marketing firm in the United States. For the modern American man, the change in marital status is not just a personal tragedy. It is a high-value signal that triggers a multi-billion-dollar machinery designed to capitalize on his transition. Historically, the midlife crisis was a punchline involving a red sports car and a questionable wardrobe. In the 2026 demographic shift, that cliché has been replaced by a highly sophisticated, data-driven reinvention economy. Men are no longer just making choices. They are being funneled into a new consumer identity by algorithms that recognize emotional and social instability as a prime window for high-ticket sales. Consider the case study of Jason, a 46-year-old software director in Seattle. Within 72 hours of updating his social profile and searching for a short-term lease, Jason's digital environment underwent a radical transformation. The ads for family-oriented SUVs and home improvement tools vanished, replaced by a relentless stream of content focused on three specific pillars: biological optimization, the bachelor infrastructure, and the mentorship industrial complex. This is the demographic reality of the 2026 divorcee. He is seen by the market as a high earner with a sudden, massive increase in disposable income, because while his total wealth may have been halved, his daily spending is no longer subject to the checks and balances of a dual-signature household. Imagine if your every insecurity about aging and relevance was mapped out by an AI and used to sell you a subscription to a version of yourself that doesn't exist. This is the biological optimization pillar. In 2026, the demographic of divorced men has become the primary growth driver for the wellness and aesthetic industry. We are seeing a historic rise in men seeking testosterone replacement therapy, hair restoration, and even cosmetic procedures like jawline contouring. The historical trend was for men to let themselves go after a divorce. Today, the pressure of the digital dating market, which we will explore later, has created a demographic of men who feel they must physically compete with men 20 years younger. Jason found himself in a step-by-step funnel that began with a simple blood test ad and ended with a $5,000 a year longevity protocol. The potential outcomes of these treatments are often discussed in glowing terms in marketing materials, but for the demographic of men over 40, it represents a permanent new line item in an already strained post-divorce budget. The second pillar is the rise of the bachelor infrastructure. In cities like Seattle, Austin, and Miami, real estate developers in 2026 are pivoting toward what they call the transitional luxury demographic. These are high-end apartment complexes specifically designed for the divorced man who has lost his family home but maintains a high salary. These spaces offer a concierge lifestyle that replaces the domestic management previously provided by a spouse. Everything from laundry service to pre-stocked refrigerators is included. Step by step, the industry aims to remove the friction of living alone. Jason moved into a building where 60% of the residents were men in his exact demographic. This creates a curated echo chamber where the loss of the nuclear family is normalized and replaced by a high-consumption, service-oriented lifestyle. While this provides immediate convenience, the demographic data suggests it also reinforces a cycle of isolation and high fixed costs that can prevent long-term financial recovery. Thirdly, we have the mentorship industrial complex. In 2026, there is a massive demographic of men who feel culturally and socially adrift after a divorce. They are looking for a new North Star. This has birthed a wave of high-ticket coaching programs and masterminds that promise to help men reclaim their masculinity and rebuild their lives. These programs often cost anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 for a weekend retreat or a 6-month digital curriculum. Case studies of these programs show a recurring theme. They provide a sense of community that the divorced man has lost, but they do so at a premium price. The marketing for these programs is surgically precise, targeting men like Jason who are browsing LinkedIn at 2 a.m., looking for a sense of purpose that isn't tied to their failed marriage or their demanding job. This reinvention economy is a significant demographic shift because it redirects capital that would have historically been used for retirement or generational wealth toward a transitory, consumption-based identity. For the American man in 2026, the cost of being single is not just about the legal fees or the child support. It is about the targeted pressure to spend his way out of his grief. The industry understands that a man in transition is a man who is more likely to make impulsive, high-value purchases. This has created a new class of consumer, the perpetually transitioning male. Furthermore, we must look at the data regarding digital dating as a commercialized experience for this demographic. In 2026, the apps are no longer free or low-cost tools. They have evolved into tiered subscription models that use gamification to keep men engaged. For a divorced man re-entering the market after 15 years, the learning curve is steep and expensive. He is targeted with premium features that promise to increase his visibility to the top 5% of users. The demographic data indicates that divorced men spend significantly more on these platforms than their never-married counterparts, as they are often more desperate for validation and companionship. Imagine if your social interactions were governed by a pay-to-play model, where your success was directly correlated to your willingness to subscribe to a gold tier membership. This is the reality for the 2026 man. He is a data point in a machine that profits from his lack of connection. The historical trends of meeting through friends or work have been decimated by the efficiency of the algorithm, leaving the divorced man in a demographic trap where his social life has become another recurring monthly expense. Step by step, the post-divorce industry deconstructs the man's old life and sells it back to him in a more expensive individualistic package. From the meal prep kits that replace the family dinner to the luxury solo travel packages designed for the high-net-worth single, every aspect of his existence is being commodified. The risk for the 2026 demographic is that men will emerge from their divorce with their legal battles won, but their long-term financial stability eroded by the very industry that promised to help them rebuild. But while the market is busy selling the dream of a high-status bachelor life, a much more grounded reality is hitting the workplace. The American man's professional identity is also undergoing a demographic shift. In 2026, the way employers view the divorced man is changing, and it isn't always in his favor. There is a hidden demographic penalty in the corporate world that most men don't realize exists until they are passed over for a promotion or find themselves on the wrong end of a layoff. If you think your personal life is separate from your professional trajectory, you are ignoring the data. In the next part, we are going to expose the career impact, the statistics on how divorce affects a man's earning power, and the subtle, often unconscious biases that the 2026 corporate machine holds against the single father. We will look at why the corner office is increasingly reserved for those with a stable home front, and what you can do to protect your career from your domestic fallout. The corporate boardrooms of 2026 operate on a thin margin of efficiency where any perceived instability in a high-level executive is viewed as a systemic risk. Historically, sociologists have documented a phenomenon known as the marriage premium, where married men earn significantly more than their single counterparts. This was driven by a perception that a married man was anchored, responsible, and possessed a domestic infrastructure that allowed him to focus entirely on his professional output. However, in the current demographic shift, we are seeing the emergence of the divorce penalty. For the American man in 2026, the dissolution of a marriage is often interpreted by the corporate machine as a loss of that critical anchor, leading to a subtle but measurable stagnation in career trajectory. To see this play out, let us look at the case study of Brian, a 44-year-old senior vice president at a logistics firm in Chicago. Before his filing in 2025, Brian was on a fast track for a C-suite position. He had a stable home life that handled the social labor of corporate networking, the dinners, the holiday parties, and the maintaining of relationships with other executives and their spouses. When Brian entered the demographic of the divorced father in 2026, that social infrastructure vanished overnight. In the hyper-competitive environment of the United States today, where AI-driven performance metrics track every minute of a leader's engagement, the sudden introduction of personal chaos into Brian's schedule was flagged as a performance dip. Step by step, the corporate sideline happens almost invisibly. First, there is the issue of the 50-50 custody schedule we discussed in Part 5. Brian now has alternating weeks where he is the primary parent, responsible for school drop-offs and the sudden emergencies of childhood. In the 2026 workplace, where the expectation of 24/7 availability is the unspoken rule for top-tier roles, Brian began missing the 7 p.m. strategy sessions and the impromptu weekend travel. While his company officially supported his family-first approach, the demographic data shows that management began gravitating toward colleagues who lacked these domestic friction points. This is not overt discrimination. It is the cold logic of the corporate machine seeking the path of least resistance. Brian was not fired, but he was quietly moved off the high-stakes international accounts and onto more predictable, lower-growth regional projects. Imagine if you are in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation that could define your career for the next decade. Your phone buzzes in your pocket with a notification from the court-mandated parenting app. Your former spouse is disputing a medical expense or a schedule change. The cognitive load required to ignore that personal intrusion, while maintaining executive presence, is immense. Historical trends suggest that the brain fog associated with divorce syndrome, which we identified as a physical toll in Part 6, leads to a decrease in what researchers call the high cognitive function hours. For a man in 2026, this means his ability to perform at a peak level is reduced exactly at the moment when he needs his income to be at its highest to satisfy his algorithmic support obligations. The statistics for 2026 are sobering. Divorced men are 20% less likely to receive a promotion within the first 3 years of their marital split, compared to their married peers with identical performance histories. This demographic penalty is often tied to the loss of the corporate wife. In the upper echelons of the American workforce, marriage is still viewed as a credential of stability. When an executive is no longer part of a stable couple, he loses access to the informal networking circles that often happen in social settings where spouses are present. Brian found that he was no longer being invited to the casual weekend gatherings at the CEO's home, because the demographic balance of the event had shifted. He became a social outlier in a world where business is still heavily influenced by personal rapport. Furthermore, we must address the financial pressure that forces men into career-stunting decisions. Because the algorithmic decree often sets support payments based on a man's peak earning capacity, many men in 2026 find themselves unable to take professional risks. A married man might feel comfortable leaving a stable job to start a venture or join a high-growth startup. A divorced man, tethered to high fixed monthly payments and the threat of legal repercussions if he falls behind, is often forced to stay in a soul-crushing but stable role. This creates a demographic of the trapped professional men who are overqualified for their current positions, but unable to afford the temporary pay cut required for a long-term career pivot. The potential outcomes for men who do not proactively manage their professional narrative during a divorce are often characterized by long-term earning plateaus. To combat this, the demographic of men who successfully survive the divorce penalty in 2026 are those who utilize a strategy of radical transparency and digital boundaries. They treat their career as a separate asset that must be shielded from the litigation. Case studies of these men show a pattern of hiring professional assistants to handle the administrative load of the divorce, ensuring that the conflict never spills over into the corporate email system or the office environment. However, even with these precautions, there is a psychological element at play. The corporate machine in the United States values the image of the winner. In the 2026 cultural climate, divorce is still often viewed through an archaic lens as a personal failure. This bias, though often unconscious, colors how managers perceive a man's leadership potential. If a man cannot manage his own household, the logic goes, can he be trusted to manage a division of 500 people? This demographic bias is a primary reason why the corner office is still statistically dominated by individuals in long-term first marriages, despite the high general divorce rate in the country. The impact of this career stagnation ripples out into the man's retirement planning. For a man like Brian, 3 years of missed promotions and the inability to take equity in a startup can result in a loss of millions of dollars in lifetime earnings. When this is compounded by the asset split and the high cost of maintaining two households, the demographic reality for the 2026 divorced man is that he is often looking at a retirement age that has been pushed back by 10 to 15 years compared to his original plan. He is part of a growing demographic of men who will be required to work well into their 70s, not out of passion, but out of financial necessity created by a legal and corporate system that failed to account for the modern reality of domestic transition. As we look at the data, it becomes clear that the workplace is the second courtroom for the divorced man. But as difficult as the corporate world can be, there is a new horizon appearing for many men. Once the dust of the first divorce settles, a huge percentage of the demographic looks toward a second chance. They enter the world of remarriage and blended families, hoping to apply the lessons they have learned. But the statistics for 2026 suggest that the second time around is often even more complex and carries a higher demographic risk than the first. In the next part, we are going to look at the remarriage trap, the data on why second and third marriages fail at a higher rate, and how the introduction of stepchildren and new legal entanglements creates a demographic web that many men find impossible to escape. We will break down the mathematics of the blended family, and why the dream of a fresh start often leads to a deeper demographic hole. The dream of the fresh start is perhaps the most seductive demographic trap in the modern American landscape. In 2026, the statistics surrounding second and third marriages reveal a harsh mathematical reality that many men ignore in their pursuit of emotional recovery. While the initial divorce is often viewed as a singular catastrophic event, the demographic data shows that for a significant portion of men, it is merely the first chapter in a compounding cycle of domestic instability. Historical trends indicate that while roughly 50% of first marriages in the United States end in dissolution, that number jumps to 67% for second marriages, and a staggering 73% for third marriages. For the American man, the second chance is statistically more likely to result in a second legal battle, and the financial and psychological stakes are often double what they were the first time around. To understand why this demographic has such a high failure rate, we must look at the case study of Mark, a 52-year-old civil engineer in Houston. After his first divorce was finalized in 2024, Mark felt a profound sense of isolation. By early 2026, he met Sarah, who was also a high-earning professional with 2 children of her own. They decided to merge their lives, viewing it as a logical consolidation of resources. However, they were entering what sociologists call the complex blended household demographic. Mark wasn't just marrying Sarah. He was marrying her legal history, her debt-to-income ratio, and the emotional infrastructure of her previous relationship. Step by step, the mathematics of the blended family began to erode their stability. First, there is the issue of stacked obligations. Mark was already paying a significant percentage of his gross income toward his first household through the algorithmic decree we discussed in Part 4. When he married Sarah, he assumed that their combined incomes would create a surplus. But in the 2026 economy, the cost of maintaining a household large enough for 4 children, 2 biological and 2 stepchildren, meant that Mark's disposable income actually decreased. He was now effectively funding the lifestyle of 2 separate households while only living in one. This is a primary driver of the remarriage trap. Men often overestimate the economies of scale in a second marriage and underestimate the friction of competing financial priorities. Imagine if every financial decision you make for your new family has to be cleared through the lens of your old family's legal requirements. This is the reality for the 2026 demographic of remarried men. If Mark wanted to take his new family on a vacation, he first had to ensure that his support payments were current, and that the travel did not violate the rigid parenting schedule of his first divorce. If Sarah's ex-husband fell behind on his payments, the financial burden of her children fell entirely on Mark. This creates what researchers call the resentment sinkhole. Historical trends show that financial conflict is the #1 predictor of divorce in second marriages, and for men in 2026, that conflict is often intensified by the feeling that they are working to support a domestic ghost, a previous life that continues to demand tribute. The second demographic landmine is the step-parenting gauntlet. In 2026, the concept of the nuclear family has been replaced by a web of intersecting loyalties. Mark found that his authority in his own home was constantly being negotiated. The demographic data indicates that children in blended families often experience loyalty binds, where being close to a stepfather feels like a betrayal of the biological father. For a man like Mark, who is already dealing with the emotional toll of his first divorce, this lack of domestic cohesion leads to a state of chronic stress. He is a provider without the traditional status of a patriarch. He is paying for a life where he often feels like a guest or worse, a temporary utility. From a legal perspective, the 2026 demographic of remarried men is facing a new phenomenon: the equity sinkhole. Step by step, men often unwittingly dismantle their remaining wealth during a second marriage. Mark used the $300,000 he received from the sale of his first family home as a down payment on a new house with Sarah. In many U.S. jurisdictions, the moment those funds are used to purchase a joint asset, they are considered commingled. If the second marriage fails, which, as we know, it is 67% likely to do, that initial $300,000 is no longer Mark's separate property. It is split again. For the American man, the potential outcome of a second divorce is not just a halving of his wealth, but a total depletion of his core capital. He goes from having a significant nest egg to having almost nothing, at an age where his ability to rebuild is severely limited. Furthermore, we must address the digital conflict contagion. In 2026, the digital footprint of a first marriage never truly disappears. Through shared photo albums, social media tags, and the ubiquitous parenting apps, the new spouse is constantly confronted with the reality of the old one. This leads to a demographic of second marriages that are plagued by digital jealousy and surveillance. Case studies show that the high conflict dynamics of a first divorce often bleed into the second marriage through these digital tethers. Sarah and Mark found themselves arguing not about their own relationship, but about a text message from Mark's ex-wife or a social media post from Sarah's ex-husband. The 2026 man is living in a goldfish bowl where his past and present are in constant, friction-filled contact. The psychological baggage of the 2026 demographic cannot be ignored. Most men enter second marriages without having fully processed the divorce syndrome we discussed in Part 6. They are seeking a bandage for a systemic wound. The data shows that men who remarry within 2 years of a divorce have a significantly higher risk of a second failure. They often repeat the same communication patterns or, in an attempt to avoid their previous mistakes, swing to an opposite extreme that creates new problems. Mark found that he was so afraid of conflict, having been traumatized by his first legal battle, that he failed to set necessary boundaries in his second marriage, leading to a slow erosion of his own needs and identity. But perhaps the most overlooked demographic shift is the rise of the serial divorcee. This is a growing group of men in their late 50s and early 60s who have navigated 2 or 3 divorces. These men represent the ultimate cautionary tale of the 2026 demographic shift. They have spent their peak earning years in a state of constant legal and financial defense. They have no core assets. Their relationships with their biological children are often strained by years of blended family conflict, and their physical health is compromised by decades of chronic stress. They are a demographic that is functionally starting over at 60, in an economy that is increasingly hostile to older workers. Understanding the remarriage trap is about more than just being cynical. It is about applying the same level of due diligence to your personal life that you would to a high-stakes business investment. The 2026 data suggests that for the American man, the most stable path forward is often not a quick remarriage, but a long-term commitment to individual recovery and the preservation of what remains of his autonomy and assets. The dream of the fresh start is a powerful narrative, but the mathematics of the second divorce are cold and unforgiving. As we reach the final stage of this masterclass, we have to look toward the horizon. Everything we have discussed, the algorithmic decrees, the digital forensics, the physical toll, and the remarriage traps, is leading to a fundamental restructuring of the American male experience. The very definition of what it means to be a man, a father, and a husband is in a state of flux. But within this chaos, a new demographic of men is beginning to emerge. These are the men who have seen the data, understood the shifts, and are building a new way of living that bypasses the traditional pitfalls. In the final part of this series, we are going to look at the future of the American man, the demographic of the 2030s and beyond. We will explore the rise of the autonomous male, the new models of family, and how you can position yourself to not just survive this demographic shift, but to define it on your own terms. The old world is gone. Let's look at what is coming next. We are standing at the threshold of a new era, where the traditional American nuclear family is no longer the default setting for the male experience. By 2026, the demographic data suggests that the successful man is the one who has transitioned from a reactive participant in the legal system to a proactive architect of his own social and financial sovereignty. This is the rise of the autonomous male demographic. To understand this shift, we must look at the case study of Alex, a 42-year-old tech consultant in Denver. Alex witnessed the financial and emotional erasure of his peers during the early 2020s and decided to build a life based on what sociologists now call the living apart together or LAT model. In 2026, the LAT demographic has expanded by nearly 25% among professional men over 40. This model involves a committed long-term relationship where both partners maintain completely separate residences and independent financial accounts. For Alex, the potential outcome of this arrangement is the preservation of his core assets, his home equity, his 401k, and his digital portfolio, while still enjoying the emotional intimacy of a partnership. By removing the domestic commingling that triggers the legal machine of the American family court, men like Alex are effectively opting out of the risk profile associated with traditional divorce. They are redefining the demographic of the bachelor from a state of temporary transition to a state of permanent, intentional stability. Step by step, the construction of this autonomous lifestyle follows a precise wealth architecture. First, there is the utilization of the Domestic Asset Protection Trust or DAPT. In 2026, men are increasingly setting up these irrevocable trusts in states like Nevada or South Dakota before entering any serious long-term union. This legal structure places assets behind a professional barrier that is significantly more robust than a traditional prenuptial agreement. Historically, prenups have been vulnerable to challenges based on claims of duress or unfairness. A DAPT, however, is a proactive shielding of wealth that exists independently of a marital contract. The demographic of men using these trusts has moved from the ultra-wealthy to the upper middle class, as more men realize that their primary protection is not a signed paper, but a structural separation of ownership. Imagine if you could enter a relationship knowing that your life's work was legally sequestered from the volatility of domestic litigation. This clarity allows for a different kind of emotional connection, one that is not burdened by the silent fear of future asset stripping. In 2026, we are also seeing the emergence of the contractual union or the beta marriage. This demographic trend involves couples who enter marriage with a sunset clause, a legal expiration date where the marriage is automatically dissolved unless both parties actively choose to renew the contract. This shifts the power dynamic from an indefinite, high-stakes gamble to a series of conscious, time-bound decisions. It reflects a historical trend toward the commodification of time and the recognition that human compatibility is not always a permanent state. Next, we must examine the demographic of the collaborative co-parent. As the 50-50 custody myth was exposed in Part 5, a new group of fathers has emerged who treat the raising of children as a professional joint venture rather than a personal conflict. In 2026, these men are bypassing the court-mandated communication apps in favor of private, business-like operating agreements. They hire professional family coordinators to manage the logistics, much like a project manager handles a corporate merger. This removes the emotional trigger points and ensures that the children are raised in a stable, predictable environment. The data suggests that fathers who adopt this business model approach to parenting have higher rates of long-term involvement and lower levels of chronic stress. Furthermore, we are witnessing a radical change in male social structures. As the loneliness epidemic of the divorced man became a public health crisis, 2026 saw the rise of the social household. This is a demographic of men, often divorced or intentionally single, who pool their resources to purchase multi-unit properties or large communal estates. These are not the frat houses of the past. They are high-end, sophisticated living environments where men can maintain their privacy while benefiting from a shared social infrastructure and reduced overhead. By sharing the cost of land, security, and domestic services, these men are able to maintain a Tier 1 lifestyle while paying Tier 3 costs. This demographic shift is a direct response to the high cost of the one-person household that we discussed in Part 2. Step by step, the 2026 man is also reclaiming his physical sovereignty through the medical advancements we touched on in Part 6. The demographic of men in their 50s who are functionally identical to men in their 30s is growing. Through targeted hormone optimization, advanced nutritional science, and the use of biometric feedback loops, men are extending their peak productive and social years. This expanded horizon changes the math of the midlife transition. A man at 50 in 2026 is no longer looking at the beginning of the end. He is looking at the start of a second 40-year cycle. This demographic reality makes the loss of a 20-year marriage feel less like a final defeat and more like a significant, but survivable pivot point. But the most profound demographic shift is occurring in the realm of identity. For over a century, the American man's identity was inextricably linked to his role as the head of a nuclear household. In 2026, that pillar is being replaced by a more diversified identity based on professional mastery, physical excellence, and a network of high-value male peer groups. The historical trend of the isolated husband is giving way to the demographic of the connected sovereign. These men are building communities based on shared values and goals, rather than just geographic proximity or workplace convenience. They are utilizing digital platforms to form global masterminds that provide the mentorship and support that was once found in traditional fraternal organizations. Case studies of men who have successfully transitioned into this new demographic show a common thread. They stopped looking for a systemic solution to their personal problems. They realized that the legal machine, the corporate structure, and the traditional social playbook were not designed for their benefit in the modern era. Instead, they took the data, the cold, hard statistics of the 2026 landscape, and used it to build a bespoke life. The potential outcomes for this new demographic are characterized by higher levels of financial security, better health markers, and a sense of purpose that is not dependent on the approval of a spouse or the stability of a domestic contract. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, it is clear that the changing demographics of divorce for men in America are not just a collection of numbers. They are a map of a disappearing world and a compass for a new one. The 50% divorce rate, the gray divorce explosion, the algorithmic decrees, and the digital forensics are the walls of a labyrinth that has trapped an entire generation of men. But by understanding the mathematics of the split, the biology of the stress, and the economics of the reinvention, you have the tools to find the exit. The American man of 2030 will look very different from the man of 1980. He will be more autonomous, more legally protected, and more physically resilient. He will view marriage not as a mandatory milestone, but as one of many possible social configurations, each with its own risk-reward profile. He will be a man who understands that in a world of shifting demographics, his only true security lies in his ability to adapt, to protect his assets, and to define his own value. The old world is gone, but for the man who is prepared, the new world offers a level of freedom and clarity that was previously unimaginable. But even as we master the demographics of the present, there is a shadow looming on the horizon, a technological shift that is about to change the very nature of human companionship and the legal definition of a household. If you think the digital forensics of 2026 were invasive, you haven't seen how the next wave of artificial intelligence is about to redefine the concept of the legal person and the marital bond itself. We are moving into a territory where the line between the biological and the digital becomes blurred, and the legal implications for men's rights and assets will be the most complex battleground yet. The masterclass doesn't end here. It merely moves into the next dimension of the human experience. Stay tuned because the future of the American man is being rewritten in real time.